Hello, and welcome to North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at the current edition of the North Coast Journal. My name is Matt Knight, and I'll be your host this week. And I am joined by North Coast Journal's managing editor, Jennifer Miko-Cahill. Welcome, Jennifer.
How are you doing, Matt?
A little tongue-tied, but other than that, I'm doing okay. I should hasten to mention that our host Tanya Schrum will be out this week, and she'll be back next. She's attending some personal business, and so I jumped in at the last minute. I know I'm a poor substitution, but I'll do what I can.
Listen, not at all. I'm just glad we are here and not washed away in a tsunami.
That's right. Yeah, it was a brief moment of trepidation there, but we managed to dodge the wave.
I guess we'll see what happens in the rest of the world, but so far we have dodged it. I'm knocking wood right now.
That's right.
If you are interested in tsunami sirens, you might go back and learn about the tsunami sirens all over the North Coast in Kim Ware's article in our archives at northcoastjournal.com, by the way. That's a fascinating one.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. And speaking of high recommendations, I'd like to recommend the cover story this week. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going to be on the cover of the North Coast Journal this week?
So this week I have a story about life in prison, a particular aspect of life in prison that is being, I think, improved and made meaningful by some folks from Dell'Arte International. So Dell'Arte International, you know them for masks, you know them for a little clowning around. However, they have for many years had a program where they go to Pelican Bay State Prison, which is the North Coast's only supermax facility. Is it the only one in the state? Possibly. But it is a supermax facility. It's a level 4 prison. And you may have heard in years past, we've covered things like conditions in the SHU, in the solitary confinement. And we have covered all sorts of things regarding the prison. This is very different. This is one of those things where somebody has come in and decided to work on the rehabilitative aspect, the growth and getting folks ready to return to society aspect of prison rather than confinement and punishment. And so Dell'Arte has sent in the past students, but of late they have sent a couple of faculty, and I spoke to those faculty, including Janessa Johnsrud was the main person I spoke to in regard to how they run the program there. And I also got to speak to Sam Nault, who is an incarcerated man at Pelican Bay State Prison, and he has had experience with a couple of theater classes there, but in particular with the group theater arts program through Dell'Arte. And it's been a transformative experience for him. It's been really interesting to learn about all this.
Now, this has all kind of come to light due to a documentary, am I correct in that, by Malcolm DeSoto?
That's right. And there is going to be a premiere for that documentary. And let me make sure that I have the time and date for that correct on here. So that is going to be on August 31st, I believe, August 1st at the Dell'Arte's Carlo Theater. And they're going to show this documentary that Malcolm DeSoto put together about the theater program. It has interviews, sort of solo, talking to the camera, discussions with the folks who are participating. And then it also has scenes of their classes and the variety show that they put on for some Dell'Arte alumni and community members who were allowed into the prison to see the performance. And it's quite something. So one of the things that was interesting to me is the film is called We're All We Need. And Janessa Johns-Rood, who has been teaching theater a long time, and you've seen her maybe in the Papaya Lounge story also, or if you were lucky on stage for the Papaya Lounge shows. She's got a fantastic sense of humor. She's very like larger than life on stage. In this role, she's really very much using her silliness and her willing to be goofy as a way to get people out of their shells. And she told me about the experience of teaching in the prison and also filming the documentary. And the documentary We're All We Need takes its name from the discussion about how theater works. We're all we need. We just need our bodies and our voices and our minds and our imagination, and then we can make theater, right? Props, whatever's handy is what they used. In fact, lots of times, there weren't many things that you could bring into a prison. So they really improvised a lot. And she was saying that the difficult conditions of teaching a class in prison, it could be lockdown could cancel class. It could be you can't bring anything but paper handouts. It could be you can't have physical contact, or, the players can't have physical contact. There are a lot of things that could be barriers, but because theater is so flexible, the teaching of it can work within the conditions of incarceration and can work within some really stringent rules. So it's the We're All We Need title has that meaning, but also the sense of we are all we need inside us to endure, to move forward, to grow, etc. And you really do see both of these. It's a very short documentary. It's only 30 minutes, but it is jam-packed. Something that interested me and became the headline for this story is the way that everybody introduced themselves. So these are people who've been imprisoned for maybe a decade, as Sam Nault has been for about 11 years, been incarcerated. And they introduce themselves, they give their name. They might say like, I'm a father, or I'm a writer, I'm an artist. And one of them began by saying, I'm an artist incarcerated at Pelican Bay State Prison. And that struck me because, as Janessa pointed out, most of the time people are in prison referring to you as prisoner, inmate, maybe your number. You are a con, you are an ex-con when you get out. This is a moment to reclaim who you are, right? To say, I am an artist. And the Dell'Arte...
Or identified by your crime, I think is the other.
That's right. Sam Nault talks about if you did a robbery, then for the rest of your life, you're a robber. But then 10 years on, is your story more than that, right? So they are talking about ways to use imagination, to use paying attention to their nervous systems and things like that in order to kind of reclaim who they are, pay attention to their responses to things, and really develop themselves. And it's been a really interesting conversation talking to both the teachers and talking to a student about it and watching the film. When I spoke to Sam over the phone, and that was interesting too, we had to make an appointment. I had to have, certain questions. Full disclosure, I couldn't just go on there and ask him every question that came to mind as we went. I had to have a set of questions approved through the prison. It's all very regimented. And when we were talking, he was saying that some of the things that they practiced, like paying attention to your nervous system, which is one of the things that they teach is the Alexander method, which involves lots of paying attention to your nervous system, how your body feels, postures that you hold your body in, habitual movements, habitual postures, and paying attention to how emotions affect your body. When you get stressed out, sometimes you feel that adrenaline drop. Maybe you feel it in your hands. Maybe you feel it in your chest. When you see a terrible email, you really feel it. When you see that, you hear that tsunami warning, what did your body do, right? What was your body's reaction. And if you can,
Run.
exactly, my body's desire to pack. So he talked about how once you have an awareness of that and you feel it, you don't necessarily have to follow it. You don't have to follow animal instinct, right? You don't have to follow your lizard brain. And he talked about how you can not only see it and kind of calm yourself and not be so reactive. And he feels like he's no longer a reactive person, but you can also see it in others. And you can see somebody getting worked up with you and kind of be like, okay, I know what this person is feeling. And I don't have to take it personal. I don't have to respond to it in kind. I can see that they're worked up. I can see how their body is responding, their posture and everything else. And I can behave differently. I can choose differently. And that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, I was struck by the fact that this is a 20-week course, and that they looked at it as sort of a reprieve from prison culture. I mean, a way to take yourself out of the very, sometimes dangerous and, stressful, prison culture, and kind of, use this to, I don't know, become a different person and maybe a more relaxed person. I don't know. If you could relax in a supermax, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Sam did also mention how those moments, sometimes when you're inhabiting another character or doing an exercise, being playful, you forget for a minute that you're in prison. And
Right, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and that it seems invaluable, but it also gave him a sense of value in another way. He talked about how people being willing to come in and teach them and willing to help them sit with some difficult feelings, including things like taking responsibility for your actions, taking accountability, sitting with the feelings and the traumas and the choices that brought you to where you are. That's difficult, but sometimes in the exercises or in the feelings brought on by those exercises, you have to. And he said that having people come in and being willing to work with them and even do silly skits with them or whatever made them feel like they're not trash. They are worth something, and somebody cares enough to put in all this effort for them. And it's something that he's wanting to carry when he gets back outside, when he re-enters society. He wants to give that back and pay that back and have other people also see their own value. And I think that's really astounding.
And I also noted with interest that they're considering bringing this course to the Humboldt County Jail as well.
That's right. It is really interesting to think of, as you said, it's a 20-week course that they teach, how Johnsrud and company are going to change this into, including Sam Williams-Gray, who is her partner teaching, how those two are going to make a course that is, for one thing, going to involve women for the first time. The Pelican Bay courses are all men, but a course that is going to be drop-in. What if somebody's only there for a week, but they could still benefit from this kind of thing? They could still get something out of it. One of the things that Sam Nault mentioned was not having had a sense of free, tension-free play in childhood, not having enough of that, of being able to be silly, of not feeling judged, and of bonding with other people. That's an experience that can benefit, honestly, anybody. And how are they going to shape that for a shorter term, for a one-day class, for a drop-in, for even more mixed groups? It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, a really uplifting story for a change. And thanks for bringing it to us. Do you have any final thoughts about it before we move on to our next story?
I think something that really is going to stay with me from this story is about what Julie Douglas, who is also from Dell'Arte International, and she was there, she was teaching the Alexander method. She was talking about how the students there are so hungry for these classes and how, and Sam had said how much he felt more in touch with his humanity. And Janessa had said the same thing about arts helping you be in touch with your humanity. And it really made me think about the way that arts education can put us in touch with our humanity maybe before something happens in your life and you make choices and end up in prison. I really see how the loss of that kind of funding has reverberating impacts when you see people who've gone so long without it.
Yeah, well said. Well, anyway, I encourage people to pick up a copy of the journal and check out the story. I think you'll come away with a good feeling in reading it. So next up is a news story about Texas sticking their nose into California's business.
Ooh, Matt has feelings about it. But you're not wrong, because this is something that is very California, although it's a fight in California too. But this is a moment where, let me see if I can double check his name, Representative Troy Nehls. Is that how we say his name? Nehls? Niels? Nehls? Troy, can I call you Troy? Has managed to put forward a bill that, if passed by the House and Senate and signed off by President Trump, it would be the joint resolution of disapproval. And it is a disapproval against the barred owl management program that we've written about before. You may have, this is Kim Ware's update on a story that she's been tracking for some time. And she has been talking about in the past the barred owl management plan, which, let me back up and tell you a little something about our friend the barred owl. The barred owl showed up in Humboldt from the East Coast in the 60s. I mean, narrow it down, right? We all know one. And the barred owl, as an East Coast transplant, I can make this joke. The barred owl came and was aggressive, took over, ate everything, and has been pushing out the California northern spotted owl and the California spotted owl. So the northern spotted owl has been an endangered species since the 90s. You may have heard of it in terms of any kind of building, any kind of logging, things like that. Protected species homes are something that has blocked a lot of construction, logging, things like that. And there have been big controversies over whether it's been effective, who it's affected adversely, financially, etc. But making sure that there's enough habitat for the northern spotted owl has been a big priority. It hasn't been as successful as everybody wanted it to be. And part of that might be because of certain East Coast transplants. The barred owl. The plan to deal with that is something that is real uncomfortable, which is culling barred owls. So it is a tough pill to swallow, and even proponents of the plan say, yeah, this is a terrible solution, but it's the one we've got. Or at least it feels awful to do, because it means killing barred owls so that they are not pushing northern spotted owls out of the way for resources.
Well, what I didn't realize in reading Kim's story, I discovered that it's not just the owls that are affected by the barred owls. It's really everything in the ecosystem, because these barred owls come in and just hoover up all of the available resources and anything that there is to eat for, small animals, foxes, and what have you, and just kind of sort of decimate the area. So it's not really just that they're going after, our friends, the other owls. It's that they really just come in and take over and just really, vacuum up everything that's of value in any area that they occupy.
Exactly. It's referred to in the story as the cascading effects of the barred owl's appetites. And it's breadth of prey, because it eats so many different kinds of things and so much of it, it's kind of hard to track how much damage it's doing in terms of the original residents of our forests and such. Now, the bill is largely protesting on the basis of cost, that it's tons of money that would be wasted and they don't think it's going to work. However, there's some dispute about how much that cost would be over time. In an email to the Journal, North Coast Congressman Jared Huffman was saying that Neal's concerns are short-sighted and that, yeah, it's not a perfect plan. It's not without reservation. However, as he said, there are more responsible and targeted ways to engage rather than to just stop the barred owl management plan entirely. And Tom Wheeler, who you may know as executive director of EPIC, the Arcata-based Environmental Protection Information Center, talks about how he's, and he has talked about before, how he's really struggled with the difficulty of this, right? Harming one species in order to keep another species from extinction. However, he talked about how we're past the point of being able to make softer decisions. He said that putting a halt to the barred owl management strategy is going to have dire consequences. Kim has a quote from him in here saying, "You're already flirting with extinction." And admittedly, even with this strategy, the northern spotted owl still faces significant hurdles, more so in other states, but in California too. And he points out that it's basically already extinct in Washington. And in British Columbia, it's also extinct. And we're on the edge of the edge in Oregon. So the hope is that this will help the barred owl. It won't be a complete fix. But so few things are when it comes to wildlife management, right? So it's a tough battle between people who care about wildlife having different ideas about how it should be run, and then somebody who cares mostly about the expenditure having a different idea about how it should be run.
Well, I'm just going to throw my opinion in here. That seems like an attack on science-based conservation efforts more than anything else, and just sort of a mean-spirited sort of, I don't know, what you would call trolling of conservation efforts from somebody that's not even a Californian and doesn't have to deal with any of this.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about it is we don't know how this kind of, this kind of controversy, having a wedge driven into it from outside interests, we don't know what the consequences of that are going to be either. We've seen a lot of sort of bills and things that are meant to help the environment or help our budget being used as a cudgel to stop, as you said, science-based motions, science-based changes and reforms and things like that. So we'll see what happens with this. I was left, with a foreboding feeling by Wheeler's comments. He said he intends to fight like hell. And he said, and this is what Kim ends the story with, I encourage you to go in and read more. It has a lot more about animal rights groups and the history of the barred owls on the East Coast. It's really something that before you engage in a conversation with anybody about this over brunch, you should probably sit down and read this so you have the full story. But Wheeler said, I think both sides, the animal rights groups and the environmental advocates, are in for a fight, and I don't think either of our sides will back down. So it's going to be activists versus activists violence in terms of debate, just like it's owl on owl crime. So
that's the worst.
I know.
Really.
I know. And I'm out here like a mouse.
Can't us owls just get along? Well, thank you for bringing Kim's story to us. And unfortunately, that's about all we have time for this week. North Coast Journals is out on newsstands tomorrow, and you can also go to northcoastjournal.com and read it online. I suggest that you do both, just so you cover all the bases. Jennifer, thanks for being with me, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.